Do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
Ba-ding! And it automatically unmutes. That's great, that is. Good evening, ladies and chest feeders. Hello to everyone in the chat room. Hello, good people. Good evening, greetings, well met, fellow hail. All that good stuff. I will come back to the chat in a few minutes.
Good
you
evening.
know what I'm like. Hello.
Hello.
You managed to keep all the way going until like clicking the button.
Yeah.
There were several of us in here a minute ago, and then everybody jumped out as soon as it got to the 8 o'clock. No. Let's scroll my chat room back. Yeah, a minute or two late. You know what it's like. It's fairly standard now for me. Never actually properly organised. My disorganisation is like a shield. It protects me from destiny. Anyway, before I get too silly, yes, welcome back, folks. Another edition of Harry Pothead and the Philosopher's Stone. No, sorry, Sol Excalibre. On this moon day evening, I hope you've all been banking your holidays, banking up your holy days. That's what we've had here in the UK over this weekend. I know in quite a few other countries, this weekend is considered a holy day weekend. And it's it was just a day or two ago, it was the Easter ceremonies in the Orthodox churches. So yeah, this weekend, this time period that sort of slots in between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, this is a time period that for far into, I'm trying to sort my screen shares out, far into recorded history and before, this time period has been considered significant, relevant, and you could put a very loose label of astro-theological connections to this time period, and some people call it agri-theological because it primarily relates to growing seasons and the changes in the seasons for growth and fertility, etc. And yeah, over the weekend on May the 1st, it was Beltane, which is the fire festival, the festival to celebrate the beginning of summer, because now is supposedly summer proper. This is just the Wikipedia page to show for reference purposes. You can't submit this as a college essay answer. Wikipedia cannot be used as a reference source, even though they do constantly. Yeah, but yeah, Beltane. And as I was going to say, of course, as well, the day prior to Beltane, if I get my screen share sorted out properly again, switch over, Walpurgis night, or shouldn't it be Walpurgis night in the German? Because I think the W is pronounced more as a the, Walpurgis, Walpurgisnacht. This is for Saint Walpurga. Walpurga. And I just find that an interesting connection. Maybe this family of saints, because there was more than one. Her and her brother, I think, Richard the Pilgrim. That puts a Christian theological connection to this time period as well. But if you read into Walpurgis night, recommend Thomas Sheridan has done a lot of good coverage on what is Walpurgis night and some of the relevance in our history, certainly in European history, but it affects the whole globe, really. This is another very significant connection. Again, some of it's astrotheological, but there's also some other occultic references and relevancies. She was the saint of, how can I describe it? Holy cures, a salve, S-A-L-V-E. A salve is something like an ointment, a curative ointment, or balm, B-A-L-M. These things were the old world style of what we now call pharmaceuticals, or the pharmaceutical industry. The healers and the healing using pharmacopoeia, using herbs, using natural remedies, or some kind of amalgamation of different combinations of stuff. So I just find it interesting as that connection as well, to do with the sanctification of a curative balm or salve or application. Supposedly, according to the legends, there's still a curing power, a healing power in her, at her tomb. There's still people that do pilgrimages to her tomb, a bit like they go to Lourdes, to get healed. This is also some other cultural references of, Walpurgis or Valpurgis night is not just a Germanic thing. It spreads across most of Europe. And again, like I said, there are longer threads that go back in history that connect a lot of this stuff together. And what should I call it? The pictorial namesakes of some of the imagery I use. I'm just trying to find the picture. Can I bring that to the front? No, it's only as a background. Right, okay, find the other version of it. I don't have it in here at the moment. Oh, well, whatever. You can see it in the background. The National Socialists that were, eventually became what we now know and refer to as the Nazis. The Nazis. Doesn't exactly sound the same as National Socialist, but part of the point was they were just another group being used. Rings within rings, circles within circles. They were just another tool to be used by the people that I often refer to as the Nazis, the real, manipulators, the cabal of eugenicists and whatever else. I could put so many labels on them anyway. The point was referencing certain personalities in their hierarchy took a great interest in things like Walpurgis Night. And you wonder why. Why were those connections there? Is it something to do with the return of the sun? Because I would argue in that astrotheological sense, the reason this time period is celebrated is because it is the middle point between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. So therefore, it's like the curve of the arch. You've reached the bell curve, the top of that process, that cyclical process, from the dying off of winter, the pushing back of the darkness, which included things like the sending back to the other realm, the evil spirits, the dark spirits, the demons, the nastiness. You're pushing it all back into the dark realm because now the sun has returned. The S-U-N is the S-O-N. Why is the Orthodox Easter on this time period? The current common time and day that Easter is celebrated is thanks to things like the Reformation and whatever. It's not the way Christianity used to be in ancient times. They connected at the same time as the older faith systems or belief systems or whatever you want to call them, the older methods of marking these significant time periods of the year. So this time period is relevant as like this is now the true dawning of the age of the sun for the next several weeks during this summer cycle period, as we go up to the solstice and then back down in towards autumn, this is the reign of the Sun King. And we, as the children of the sun, are now dominant again. And those entities that come from the other realm that attempt to manipulate us, harm us, exploit us, abuse us, well, all the bad stuff, they have been sent back fully now to the other realm. Now we're under the reign of the Sun King again. So in certain cultural references and their celebrations, their ceremonies, their dogma that goes along with those celebrations, I feel, I would argue, makes that connection more than anything else, as in they're celebrating the dominant return of the sun, the successful victory of the sun over the darkness, etc.
This month there's also a blood moon, the 26th.
Yeah,
so a lunar eclipse, basically.
Do you know whereabouts is it? I'm just curious which particular parts it's going to be viewable from.
I'll look it up.
We had a pink moon as well, I think, last phase.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've spoken about this kind of thing multiple times over the last few years. It's been building up and building up. There's been a hell of a lot of astronomical and astrological connections that have been happening during this time period, these last 2 years. So yeah, the other connection I was going to make was the appropriation of the Sun King's power. That's another reason how, and part of how, the occultic systems of, I'll just call it sorcery for ease of explanation, the occultic systems of sorcery have appropriated that seasonal designation of power. As we transition this time period of the middle of the cycle between the time of darkness to the time of light, in other words, winter solstice to summer solstice, they attempt to appropriate that power of the return of the sun. And again, please don't forget that SUN is the SON in that astrotheological reference. I know many people will argue endlessly that the Christian theology about the SON, the Son of God, is something different to the astrotheological connections of marking the cycles of the sun, of Sol. But
the best place to go this year is Antarctica.
we'll send Klaus. I'm sure Klaus Schwab
you can see it in Australia, much of North America, South America, the Pacific,
Southern
Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean, but mostly in Antarctica, and Europe is next year.
Right, yeah. Southern Hemisphere then. I could make there's an interesting sort of connection of the inversion there, but it's their winter, isn't it? So maybe it's just part of the way the cycles are crossing over in that sense.
It's not every year, so it is significant in that sense.
Yeah, an unusual cycle correlating to this time period again.
Yeah.
But I was only really intending to mention, the fact that, it's been Beltane, Walpurgis night. It's a bank holiday weekend here in the UK. Why is it a bank holiday weekend? It's not the Easter weekend in the UK, is it? But yeah, all those connections that are not generally taught, you're given a sort of whitewashed. Well, that's another phrase that's sort of coming up and doing the rounds again now for other reasons.
I assume that Walpurgis night would be at a full moon.
No, I think it's just that date.
It's random.
It's the night before the dawning of May Day.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what's supposed to be significant about it, because it's connected to her death, I think, rather than her what do they call beatification, when they get sort of labelled as a saint. Yeah,
Saint.
yeah. I think she died on the 30th of April, so that's why that date becomes significant. Interestingly enough, as well, in the year 777. There's a good connection with that as well, all the sevens.
Nice.
And we're talking about saints and the use of magical cures, divine cures, I should say, to be more, correct to the theology. They're divine, they're not magic. They come from God, so you can't call them magic because magic is bad. Right, so that one in that hand is called divine, but that one in that hand is called magic. You're not allowed to use that one because that's the naughty version, but you can use this one. But both of them rely on some ability to cure you that you can't comprehend, and it just comes from somewhere else. In the general description or general definition of the word, that's what we usually call magic. Yeah, but anyway.
It's the holy industrial complex that's doing that.
Well, that's what I say. I think it's interesting that these sort of connections are meeting up during this time. I know this has been going on for most of the last year, all the kind of propaganda and whatever. But the news came out over the last week that the UK government is putting out another contract to continue the production and dissemination, broadcasting, whatever, of propaganda for the COVID campaign to last until 2022. I don't have a link for this, but it's doing the rounds at the moment. Quite a few people have spoken about this story, this news. A contract that lasts until 2022 and is worth up to £320 million, UK pounds, British pounds. 32 with lots of zeros after it. 7 zeros, I think. 320. Yeah, 7 zeros. That's 7 again. Yeah. It's not very direct, but they don't speak directly. They speak in symbology and in ambiguities, so that if you question any direct culpability, etc., they can walk away and say, "Oh no, I wasn't saying that. Oh, that symbol's not meant to reference that. Oh no, honest, we're nice people, honest." But there's been little things that they've put out this week. They've let be known, like that contract, and Dominic Raab making a statement about how masks and social distancing will more than likely carry on after the June deadline, which interestingly enough is the solstice. Isn't that funny, that connection, isn't it? Yeah, there's that cyclical, seasonal, sun connected correlation again. Yeah, so there's been that kind of stuff over this weekend. I hope you've all been having a good weekend. We did have mostly decent weather here in the UK, where I am in the Midlands anyway, until today. And now it's been rainy and blustery. Probably all their trailing that they've been doing for days has built up to the point of actually causing some precipitation. But I was speaking with Society of the Spectacle Gary earlier. He's over in Spain. He said the weather's been pretty crap over there as well. Well, certainly like today and yesterday, he said it's been raining and just unpleasant and drizzly and whatever, overcast. So it's not just here in the UK. This drawn out winter, almost sort of like slushy, that kind of dragging out the slush well into, no, we're through April, aren't we? We're into May, and we're still getting that kind of wintry trail end. We had snow here only just over a week ago, little snow blusters and whatever. So yeah, I was going to say global
does
warming,
happen,
but
once in a while, but yeah, it's pretty extreme this year. Yeah, they say here spring is at least a month late.
Yeah.
So all the trees and the flowers and everything is a month late.
It's climate change because of the COVID.
Yeah, sure. Probably
COVID
El Nino
has-
or La Nina or whatever weather phenomenon that's happening
the
somewhere. That
COVID has realised that it sort of got most of the people it wants to get now. You know, it's cornered us all, most people anyway. So now, to make sure it sort of got its complete global grip on us, it started to infect the atmosphere as well.
Yeah.
So now it's affecting the weather. That's what it is. It's the COVID virus. It grew wings and flew up into the atmosphere so it could block out the sun. Maybe that's maybe it's actually like morphing into that stuff that Billy Bob was trying to fire up into the atmosphere there, although he was talking about chalk dust, wasn't he? So
I can't remember the title of the movie, but it was with the plants that turn on humanity.
Day of the Triffids?
No, yeah, that's another one too. No, there's another one. Mark Wahlberg is in it, I think.
Downsizing?
No, but it's just something like that. It's like everything is just turning against humanity right now, right? You know, we hate ourselves. Nature hates us. The weather hates us. Everything fucking hates us.
Yeah.
What have we done?
The birds. Hitchcock's The Birds, where all the birds come to get the people. Yeah. I keep coughing tonight, so it's this change in weather. When the weather went all wet, like today, I've just been coughing all day.
Yeah. Careful you don't get taken away by the COVID police.
I think they'll more than likely just seal me in. There was a film a few years ago, and I've been trying to remember the name of it, and I just can't, because it was several years ago now, I think. It was a sci-fi thriller. It was set in current times, even though I'm calling it sci-fi thriller, it's just because it's a science fantasy-based storyline. In the storyline, they say there is a deadly illness, a deadly pathogen going around. So for people to be safe, they have to seal themselves in their own homes. And they give it, they do the emergency broadcast where they give everyone instructions. You get what some people call duct tape or gaffer tape, grip tape, the kind of fabric-based gummy glue stuff. You get a load of that, some plastic sheeting, and you have to seal up all your windows and all your doors, blah, blah, blah. And the whole story takes place in one home. And it's about a little family unit and how they cope with the alleged disaster. And it turns out, I'm going to give away spoilers here for anyone that hasn't seen it, if you could even figure out what the movie is, because I can't remember. The twist in the story is that the illness wasn't out there spreading in the wild. The illness had already been picked up by people, and what they were doing was persuading the public en masse to seal themselves in their own homes so they could allow the illness to burn out, and then the emergency services just come along and remove the bodies of those people that had it and died within their own homes. And this was a kind of like a theme, a strategy of how to cope with a pathogen that they knew they had no prospect of actually eradicating or getting rid of. So instead, they just allowed a certain percentage of the population to die off. And to do so, they persuaded them using propaganda that the safe way to survive the illness was to seal yourself in your own home. So in other words, you keep the germs in there with you. Right, so I've been desperately, for months now, I've been trying to remember the name of this movie because I thought it's very relevant to a lot of what's happened over the last year. It came out several years ago, but I cannot remember the name of it. It wasn't anything, it wasn't like a big blockbuster. It wasn't a major Hollywood movie or anything like that.
An actor?
No, mate, no. I can't think that there was anyone really majorly well known. Certainly not a name that I recognised anyway. And maybe it's just my mushed up memory of it. So was there somebody famous in it? I don't know. But yeah, this kind of storyline has been put out there many times over the years, using a alleged pathogen, an illness, a mass infection as an excuse to do other things and to disguise the rollout of what basically is martial law.
Tony is saying it's quarantine.
Quarantine.
Yeah.
I don't know. Wasn't that one with Jude Law in it?
I don't know.
No, that was Contagion, wasn't it? Not Quarantine. I'm not sure if it was called Quarantine. It sounds right because, like I said, it was the storyline was based on the concept of there being an illness and everybody being quarantined in their own home. Yeah. Sorry, just me trying to remember things off the top of my head without any research whatsoever, because the authorities told me that it's not good to do your own research. You shouldn't do your own research. It's naughty if you do that. Instead, you can just go on YouTube and be really sarcastic and ask questions about inconsistencies, about logical inconsistencies, while pointing and laughing and being sarcastic about a lot of their bullshit. So I was just trying to switch screens so I can get back and find the chat room, because now it's been approximately half hour, which is, about normal for me. I say I'm going to say hello to the chat room in a minute, and then it's like 30 minutes later. It's because I'm a giant, so I operate on a slower metabolism than everyone else. It takes me 30 minutes to do 5 minutes worth of work. Hello, Lynn. I hope you're listening. She's ensconced herself in the Lurkers Lounge. I thought that was quite a good phrase to use, for everyone out there that's, if you're not posting in the chat room or whatever, and you're just finding yourself a nice comfortable chair in the Lurkers Lounge and listening in. So hello, I hope you're enjoying your cake. No, I'm not getting the whole chat room off StreamYard. I'll have to switch back to YouTube and stop coughing in between. Genuinely concerned, hello. Hope you're all having a groovy apocalypse. Yeah. Darren Allen, hello. Mascara Snake, hello. Sidefish, hello. Dave Iron, hello. Thanks for joining in. Resi Tuba, hello. Good evening. And Dottie's in the room, hello. Faith Ferrer, hello. I'm going to try and, like I do, scroll down as quick as I can. Saul Bollocks, hello. It is indeed. There's lots of Saul Bollocks at the moment. Ridiculizer, hello. We Mad Mental Me, hello. Lion Share, hello. And Dinny Carr, hello. I had to download your video, didn't it? For some reason, Skype will no longer let me listen to audio of any videos. So I'm having to download them and then obviously listen to the download version. Tazzy, hello Taz, and Roland's Pete's in the room. Roscoe Pico Train, hello. Scrolling. Brad, hello Brad, thanks for joining in. You were on time, but I was late. Maybe that's a good combination. If I'm a little bit late, then it means you can be on time. Hi, Plains Drifter, hello. You're always first, right? Everybody's first. When you arrive exactly when you intended to, like all good wizards do. Hello to everyone in the chat. I'm trying to scroll as quick as I can. New being, hello, thanks for joining in. If I do happen to miss you out, I'm sorry. I'm trying to scroll and read quickly and keep jabbering at the same time. It does seem to be becoming a contemporary skill of the modern age, is being able to scroll, read text and talk and click things all at the same time. Lotsome Tazro, hello mate. And Stewie, hello Stewie. And I'm scrolling. Krishna, hello mate. hands up, no funny stuff. Okay. There's going to be probably a fair amount of me being sarcastic and taking the piss a lot, so there might be a bit of funny stuff. And I apologise in advance if anybody thinks I'm being irreverent about some of the subjects we're talking about. So it's just the sarcasm and the comedy is a way of transmuting the fear that they project at us constantly. Miss Masculus, hello. Thanks for joining in. Good to see you in the chat. And Spirited Woman, hello. And Wish Fix, hello, hello. I think now the chat is starting to catch up a bit again. It's doing its burst of cash thing. It seems to build up a backlog and then load it all at once. And then jumps around a lot. I'm sure you all know about this. You probably experience all this kind of thing yourself on a constant daily basis. This modern technology, the internet was supposed to be getting better and better, but in many ways it seems to have got more and more clunky. The Pale Horse, hello. The happening. It is definitely happening. That's something that I was actually, in a way, I'm going to talk about that kind of thing with some of the things I want to point at from recent events and news, etc. Now, it's just done another big jump on me again. Where did I get to? Manor Small, hello. Thanks for sending a link. I will show it in a sec. I'll put it in the side chat as well. And Paula, hello Paula, hope you're well. Scrolling. Keep your finger scrolling. Okay, I think I have, yeah, right, caught up to the chat. Thanks for letting me do that. If you're still listening, if you didn't get bored and click off, I just say people's names. What's that? That's nothing. That's just him talking about people in the chat room. All right, let me find that link. Yeah, because this is, if you want something that's not just me being silly, some more serious, relevant content. Thanks to Manos for sending this through. YouTube did shadow ban it. He posted the link as a comment under last week's video, and YouTube shadow banned the comment with the link in it, but let his other comment through where he's asked me, like, has YouTube disappeared the comment? So when I come and looked at the notifications, it's like, yes, they've disappeared it from under the video, but I could just about get a copy and paste of the link out of the notification. Sometimes I can do that. It doesn't always do it the way the software presents the comment on the notification. Sometimes the links are like off the side, so you can't copy and paste them. But this time there was enough of it there for me to grab it and do a search for it. The Rebel, hello, thanks for joining in, right? So yes, that link, that's to a PDF of a study paper from Pfizer. If I screen share it just for a sec, it will help, won't it? Because then people will be able to see what I'm talking about if they didn't want to click on the link for themselves or whatever. Yeah, I'll just show it on the screen. Pfizer, a phase 1-2-3 placebo-controlled, randomized, observer-blind, dose-finding study to evaluate the safety, tolerability, immunogenicity, and efficacy of SARS-CoV-2 RNA vaccine candidates against COVID-19 in healthy individuals. Man, that's probably one of the longest paper titles I've ever looked at or read. It is quite a long PDF. There's a hell of a lot of information in there.
Just wait for part 2.
Yeah, but I do. One of the main things that stood out to me that I thought was interesting, this is them doing tests on healthy people, not people who have tested positive, etc. And obviously, like they stipulate in the title, they're doing proper test with a control group and a double blind and whatever. I did have a quick skim through. I can't say I really comprehended most of what's in there. You need to read it fully and look through all the charts and whatever, and some of it is going to be in the relevant jargon, so not exactly meant for the general populace consumption. But for people out there, I know there's plenty of people that do have the tenacity and the knowledge base to look at this information and have a better grasp of what it's referring to than I do. Certainly a hell of a lot better grasp of it than me. But there's some little interesting bits, making connections with chronic stable HIV. Yeah, anyway, thanks for the links. I downloaded a copy of it because it is a PDF. So, whenever you find stuff like this, if you've got the storage space, keep a copy of it. If you have the ability, like if you've got a printer or something like that, print it out into hard copy. Because as Corbett has been phrasing it recently, they are metaphorically burning the Library of Alexandria. We're in a raging inferno of that process over the last few months, and it's accelerating. A kind of concept as Fahrenheit 451 describes, the storyline of that book describes this process. At some point we're going to end up with a ministry of truth that arbitrates which documentation is allowed and which isn't. And anyone caught with contraband documents or books or paperwork will be considered a domestic terrorist. And we did talk about this for the last really connects into other things like the war of terror. We've talked about this point over the years multiple times, and I say we because it's not just me talking here. There's been various of us having this conversation multiple times over the years, have been pointing out the same things. Eventually it will get to a stage where if you are trying to discuss concepts, ideas, questions, or exchange information, data, documents, etc., that is on a subject or a question that is considered forbidden, verboten, quarantined, etc., then you will more than likely get labeled with some form of the domestic terrorist designation. Camel-faced Cameron talked about this quite a few years ago here in the UK. The non-violent extremists phrase that he used. This is the kind of stuff that he was talking about or trying to point at, even though he wasn't saying it directly. And now we get up to the current time where in some situations people are being treated as if they are domestic terrorists simply because they posted a meme on Facebook, or there's pictures of them where they were attending an event, a gathering. It's just automatic association. And that's been done partly for intimidation reasons, but also to stem the movement of the information. How do you stop somebody telling their ideas? You can take their public platform away from them, which is the censorship we've been experiencing building up for the last year plus. But then beyond that, how do you then deal with them? And this is something that began, as I say, with the kind of stuff like the war of terror, where they would label people as a hate preacher or something similar. And it was all quite convenient when the people they were pointing at were those people that they had systematically demonized, or they were patsies or stooges or agents, COINTEL, double agents, etc., that were there to present a certain image, an idea, so that then they could have somebody they could point at and say, hate preacher, we need these new laws because of these hate preachers. And lo and behold, we're now in a situation where if you ask questions about COVID, you are basically labeled as a hate preacher, somebody who's saying dangerous things that could spook the horses and cause people harm, therefore you need to be shut up. And as I say, they can take the public platform away from you, but where do they then go from that point if you still persist? Because you can persist. Yeah, you can go to alternate platforms. You can go and set up your own website. You can do it in a more sort of old school fashion, printing leaflets, turning up to gatherings, organizing meetings, organizing speeches and lectures and presentations. You get the point. You can persist in trying to communicate with the general populace. Even if you're doing it with small groups at a time, you're still doing the same thing. You're sharing the information, sharing the message. They don't want you to be able to do that. So how do they stop you? They label you as being something that the general populace has already accepted is somebody that needs to be locked away because they are allegedly dangerous. Domestic terrorists. I've shown that quote many times from Goering about you just need to tell people that they're those that are asking questions are being unpatriotic and are danger to the state, to the welfare of the state, the body politic. So therefore the general populace will agree that those people need to be dealt with. That's what they're doing now, same thing. And it's getting to that stage now in some places. In the USA, some of the people that were at the gathering at the Capitol have subsequently been incarcerated and are in effect being Guantanamo'd, even though they haven't been sent to Guantanamo. And every country has got the same kind of policies and methods for doing that kind of thing. You don't get sent to a normal prison. You certainly won't be put in Gen Pop, where you could pass your information around or maybe even rally, the inmates to support your cause. Or no, you're put in a black site somewhere, and you're not on the documentation, or you just, you're sent into extended questioning and whatever. I know this can all sound a bit oppressive and doomy and all that kind of shit. Yeah, some of it can be, but the fact that they go into such an extent proves that the subject matters, the questions, the information that people are sharing is actually relevant because the system perceives it as a threat. Otherwise it wouldn't go to such extent to try and deal with that threat. When you've got thousands of healthcare workers, nurses and doctors, etc., that are getting together and forming their own little groups, collectives, alliances, etc., and speaking out, trying to get information out to the public, then the system views that as a very existential threat. Their word could do severe damage to the whole illusion that the system has woven, this whole storyline about the COVID bullshit. Yeah. Anyway, apart from my general rambling, let me talk about the things that I actually put in my notes, and that the things that I felt were interesting little significant blips from over the last week or two-ish. It sort of spreads out a bit, and you'll get it when I explain what I'm talking about, of why it's not just from the last week. Some of the things were from the last week, like I mentioned, the Dominic Raab talking about the masks and whatever, and Van Tam giving Handicock his injection. I thought that image was quite amusing. It's like, hopefully he gave him double. We'll see whether he develops the kind of, adverse reactions. That's if there was even anything in the syringe, or if it even went in his arm, etc., etc. All those questions, all those doubts. You can't trust the bullshit that they keep spouting. That includes the visual imagery bullshit that they keep presenting. UK, where I saw that whiz by in the chat then when I was scrolling. Odin in the Flames, hello. Nick GB, hello. That was the icon I saw go past when I was scrolling. Yeah. Thanks for joining in the chat, guys. think there's somebody else as well. I thought I saw. No. I must have been imagining it. So distracting myself, trying to keep up with the chat. Because I usually forget. So trying to remember. I need to put a little sticker next to the chat saying, look at me. Yeah, to go to my notes and to try and explain why this sort of stood out to me. I've had a little rant in recent weeks about how I'm getting a bit fed up of repeating the same arguments or going over the same arguments that people have been making for more than a year. For example, the all-cause mortality death statistics do not correlate to calling it a pandemic. The questions about whether the injection, the insertion, the whatever you want to call it, the jabby jab, whatever, actually will give people immunity and therefore they will be able to drop all the restrictions. That was discussed many months ago. Over a year ago, I was saying that kind of thing, that they'll tell you need the vaccine, but the vaccine then won't be good enough and they'll still keep the restrictions going, and lo and behold, it's all happened. Yeah. So there's certain elements about this whole situation that I've just, I don't see the point of going over them again and again and again and again. If people still can't get past their dissonance of looking at the inconsistencies, looking at the pile of just contradictory so-called evidence, the bullshit paperwork that the system has been pumping out. If they've had that for more than a year and they're still struggling to step over that dissonant effect, then I don't know how else I can present the same stuff to them, the same arguments to them again and again and again. But I was thinking about that kind of situation, that kind of problem of like, do we just repeat the same stuff again, hoping that more people will go, oh, right, now I get it. Now I've spent an entire 12 months thinking about the same question. Now all of a sudden I get it. Now 2 + 2 = 4. It's taken me a whole 12 months to realize what that little plus symbol meant. No, if people are still struggling with those kind of questions, then to me that indicates that it's not really the data or the question at hand that they're struggling with. It's not the obvious, blatantly in your face, inconsistent, illogical bullshit that they're struggling with. It's the questions of trust and authority that they're trying to deal with. That's where they're struggling. That's where the trust that they had given to a system that they had implicitly, whether they knew it directly, consciously or not, has been broken. And they're stuck at that point where they're looking at that broken connection going, oh, what's going on here? Why doesn't it work anymore? And they're starting, to slowly deal with that, the falling apart of their world paradigm. The image that they had in their head of how the world is supposed to work, allegedly. No, it's all falling apart. The wheels have fallen off it, mate. It's about time you scrapped it. It's due for the junkyard. But I've been thinking about that kind of stuff. And there's been one story that's popped up a couple of times in the last few weeks. Certainly over this week, it's popped up at least twice, I think. And people have been talking about it in general. And it's sort of like, yeah, okay, this could be seen as just another one of those economic effects. Talked about the ripple effect into the economic system of how, even though the lockdowns for here in the UK happened now a full year ago, March and April, so just over a year ago, some of the economic effects from that initial lockdown, those first weeks of when everything was closed down, they take a while. There's a logistical lag that builds up that means you won't see some of the effects until around now, months later. Then we had the incident with the tanker in the Suez Canal, which caused another interruption. Look into the phrase pattern interruption, and maybe that would give you some more sort of perspective of the kind of things I'm trying to reference here. Pattern interruption. Why do they want to introduce pattern interruption? Why do they want to create these rippling waves through the economic system? And the economic system includes just the industrial and production processes to create stuff, food as well as everything else, the actual production of the things that enable society to function like it usually does. Day-to-day stuff, not including the non-essential goods that, are just luxuries and whatever. Luxuries and fashion fads. Those ripple effects are really starting to be more noticeable now. More and more people have probably had that kind of experience where they've been in a supermarket or a shop and the stuff just not there anymore, not available anymore. Or you've had some of the other associated methods and effects, such as certain goods are not allowed to be sold, so they'd put tape across certain things, and it just makes no logical sense of like, I can get the stuff off that shelf, but I can't move 1 foot to the side and buy the stuff off that shelf. That doesn't make any sense, mate. Why would that infect me, but this one doesn't? Yeah. How is the virus able to tell the difference between the transition from that shelf to that shelf? None of that kind of stuff made any sense, but it creates these ripple effects through the economic system. And I thought, there's been those kind of things that indicate that economic reset, that world reset, the WEF, the Anal Schwab, the frightening need to reset the world to a new paradigm where we will have various elements, that kind of amalgamated technocracy that includes elements of fascism, elements of communism, etc., etc. Pattern interruption enables the introduction of a new pattern. That's the whole purpose of pattern interruption. And similar to how cognitive behavioral therapy works. What else or where else have you heard that phrase about behavioral therapy or behavioral manipulation? Is it connected to the SAGE team and the Spy B team and their advisors that are telling them what kind of propaganda to put out and how to frame it and what kind of psychologically manipulative arguments to use? Most of them fallacious, nearly all of them fallacious, but they'll still use them, like the granny killer kind of meme. If you don't do what we're telling you, you're going to kill my granny. All that kind of shit. That's fallacious, psychological, emotional, manipulative abuse, gaslighting and abuse. But the reset thing, there's been certain parts of the inconsistencies, which I know we sort of pointed out and talked about as they were happening over the last year plus. But this one sort of element that's been popping up recently, I think might help people see a sort of amalgamation of those different elements. I know a lot of people have talked about some of those different elements, but I've not heard anyone sort of put them all together and say, look at all these. Do you not see the patternation? For example, recently we had the storyline, the theme that they were putting out in different articles and in different news packages, video presentation packages, and on TV talk time shows, daytime talk TV kind of stuff. This idea that cats could potentially get the illness. So we had the classic Simpsons episode with the cat flu. You're going to be afraid because of the cat flu, because now you're giving it to your cats and then the cats are giving it back to you, and you just keep giving it to each other, and then your cats are going to kill us all. It began with the cats are getting the illness as well, but it very rapidly, like within a day or two, the news story transitioned into cats and pets in general, including dogs, are a carbon burden on the system. There was another couple of side associated stories with that as well. One was cats needing to be having a chip because too many of them are getting stolen, which is sort of like, what is it? Just something about this year that because of all the shit that's happening, everyone's going around stealing each other's cats? Well, that's a weird crime wave that the COVID has created, whatever. Maybe there could be a cultic connection to that, to, is it Bastet? Bast? The cat god, the Egyptian cat god. Anyway, sidetracking myself.
They're also selling vegetarian pet food now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So fake meats and fake shit for pets. So also with the same reason, it's to save the cows and cow farts. So yeah.
So who else is going to eat the cows?
Your dog is going to eat a salad.
If nobody eats the cows, what's going to happen to all the cows? Anyway, yeah. Before
I've tried feeding my dog some grass, but he wouldn't eat it.
Yeah. Only when he was ill, and then they love eating grass. Yeah. But we had that sort of storyline, that transition. The other one I was going to mention was in Ireland. They were talking about getting DNA samples of the dogs, so that then they could track naughty owners that weren't picking up their dog poo. There should be like a bright warning light on the top of that story, a blinking light on the top of that. But that was the pet connection. Yeah. Not so long ago as well, we had, looking at my notes, the meat packing storylines. Right? The illness was spreading in meat packing plants, so all the meat packing plants had to be shut down. I'm using a generalism. Yeah, I know literally not all of them were shut down, whatever. I'm using a generalism of how the propaganda presented this idea, this story, to the general populace. The illness is spreading in the meat packing plants, so therefore we have to shut them down. At the same time, they want to introduce these fake food products, what you just said, the fake pet food, and we're all supposed to be eating fake burgers and fake steaks and whatever. Well, isn't that just convenient that it's the meat packing plants that the virus invades? How is it that this virus knows the difference between a meat packing factory and a UPVC window production factory? Why does the virus go straight to the meat packing factory and not the other factory? And I just plucked a random industrial product for the other factory. You can pick a whole selection of different things that get produced in that kind of factory-based setting. Some of the arguments that they made at the time was because they're working with animal products, even though they never directly said that there is a zoonotic connection.
It's the wet market bullshit.
Yeah,
right?
Dealing with biological products. Yeah, as in, like you say, like a wet market. They're surrounded in blood and guts. Yeah, I know that's not literally how it is in most of the places, but they tried to use that kind of argument. They also use the argument that, it's because they're all packed in together. On these meat production lines, there's like loads and loads of people all stood close together, all huddled up. And there's often a lot of minor injuries, which means they have open wounds. So the illness can get into them quicker and easier because they've got all these cuts on their hands and shit like that. It's like, yes, it is a common injury problem in that kind of industry that people suffer that kind of injury. Certainly it's the same in a butcher's shop. You work in a butcher's shop, you're going to nick yourself now and again. You're going to get little cuts here and there, hopefully not worse. And a good skilled butcher will know how to not hurt himself if he's paying attention and doing his job. I'm saying he, could be a she, whatever. He, she, it, hermaphrodite. But you get the point, right? The individual little bits that they tried to claim as a justification for their arguments, as in it's an industrialized process where lots of people are crowded together, and you have that element of the kind of wet market biological product with open wounds, injuries, etc. There's probably quite a few other industries and factory-based productions that are very, very, very similar. Very similar. Maybe there's only a slight difference in the sense of maybe the other processes aren't dealing with biological products, but there's still a lot of people packed together, and they often suffer from minor injuries, maybe because they're doing assembly work or working with sharp implements or materials. There's lots of situations where there could be a very, very, very similar environment. So how did the illness know to attack the meat packing plants only, but not all these other places? That's weird. I'm asking it as a silly rhetorical question. I'm being a little bit, sarcastic in presenting it in a kind of comedic rhetorical question, just to try and point out of like, does that really make logical sense to you? That across the entire planet, because remember we're talking about a global situation here, across the entire planet, this alleged illness, this alleged pathogen is somehow geared to only target certain people in certain situations. Does that add up to everything you know, whether you're educated academically on virology, blah, blah, blah? No, just general knowledge. That does not stack up. But that was one of the elements over the last year. So we've had the pet control. You're not supposed to have pets anymore because they're a carbon burden. We've got the meat reduction because you're supposed to be eating fake food because cow farts, not just COVID destroying the atmosphere. There's COVID in the cow farts. That's probably what it is. Yeah. It's a conspiracy by all the cows. They're farting COVID everywhere and it's eating the atmosphere. It doesn't make any sense. All right. And to add a couple more, at least, before I even mention this week's element of it, a couple more elements that are obviously obvious, right from the beginning of all this shit starting. You're not allowed to fly anymore. Not unless you have the wealth to pay the dues. You can pay your indulgence cost, which is your carbon tax cost. So it's like, well, so the virus is able to figure out that this guy is flying on his own private jet, or he's hired a private jet, which has costed a big stack of money that the general populace had no way they could afford. So the virus knows that it's not supposed to attack that guy because his flight cost him lots and lots of money. But if you get on an Airbus flight over to Spain to go to Torremolinos or whatever, then it's going to get you because you didn't pay enough money, therefore you're a legitimate target for it. That to me, that's literal insanity if you think that's how it works. You think people are not flying? No, people have been flying all along, all through the year. It just depends on how much money you've got. It was nothing to do with genuinely trying to prevent a pathogen from being transmitted by travelers moving through ports and airports and ports included. They didn't do that. They just stopped the general populace from flying. Again, what else connects to a justification or a reasoning? They claim a reasoning, a reasoning of why they want people to stop international flights now. Oh, it's another agenda that's completely, different to all this stuff about an illness. And the other example I was going to say out of those two, flying is a very obvious one, but also driving. Although that has eased a fair bit as the year has progressed. And obviously there's been little differences depending on where you are in the world. So in some places they had quite a restrictive requirement. For example, you couldn't travel more than 0.5 kilometre or 1 kilometre or 5 kilometres. It varied from place to place, but you weren't allowed to travel certain distances. You certainly weren't allowed to go from town to town. So in a way, that is in effect them stopping you from driving your own vehicle. Because even though they're not telling you like, oh, we're banning vehicle travel, they were telling you weren't allowed to move a certain distance. So therefore, if you're only allowed to go 0.5 kilometre, would you really drive your car for 0.5 kilometre? Maybe, if you have difficulty moving around, you might do that. But most people, you wouldn't use your car. It would be a waste of fuel. You're not going to drive 0.5 kilometre down to the shops. You're just going to walk down to the shops. maybe I'm overestimating the number of people that still actually walk around. Cars and vehicles have become so, built into society. Again, part of why they wanted to do a pattern interruption there. So yeah, flying, driving, meat eating, pet ownership. And then the thing that popped up over the last week, this week I've seen a story about it, and I heard people talking about it last week as well. The cost of lumber, the cost of timber, wood, the cost of wood has shot up. In some estimations, it's gone up by over 400%. And again, I know it can vary slightly depending on where you are around the world. There's different availability, that kind of market reaction. But at the same time, the market seems to be being deliberately manipulated on certain commodities and products. How is the illness, the alleged illness, affecting the production of timber, of lumber, such that there is now such a high demand and lack of availability? I can get some of the increased demand because with people being locked at home, there's probably a lot more people who are doing a bit of DIY or refurbing their house or building an extension or building a greenhouse, building a grow box. Various different ways of making use of timber, of wood, that people have got more opportunity to do now. So there would have been a rise, but that kind of public demand increase, I think, wouldn't exactly have crippled the market the way it has.
It's the biomass power plants that are eating all the trees.
Yep. Even though
at least that's what's happening here a lot. So
yeah, even though they're not exactly ecologically friendly, are they? The biomass plants.
No.
But,
or efficient.
Mm-hmm. But they fit. They've been included in the official narrative of that agenda. So therefore, they're being encouraged, and they're being.
Yeah, they sound green. Bio sounds green.
Yeah. Sounds good. It makes good greenwash, as they would call it. Yeah. It's like whitewash, but you apply labels that make people think it's natural and organic and eco and all that good stuff.
The only bad thing, it eats trees. Your lovely forest. You like to walk your dog in, Yeah. Mm-hmm. Too bad.
But when I saw that story pop up, I was thinking, there's another element that adds in to if there wasn't all this alleged illness happening, if you're able to try and, let's do a bit of Scooby-Doo, try and imagine yourself, or I could do a bit of a Twilight Zone, let me take you on a journey. We control the horizontal and the vertical. Imagine yourself in another world, a parallel dimension, where there was no alleged illness. There was nothing to do with the illness whatsoever, which includes the lockdowns, the jabby jabs, the propaganda. None of that was happening, but all the other stuff was happening. So them telling you things like, oh, you shouldn't really have pets anymore. Or, oh, you can't drive you can't use your vehicle beyond 0.5 kilometer from your home, or you can't fly anymore. Why? What would that add up to other than the correlating to a green agenda, the Agenda 2030 plan, which in a way, the WEF project, the Great Reset project, is just a dressed up version. It's a diluted soundbite version of Agenda 2030. To all those elements are included in those agendas. If you go and look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and then you think about those elements that have been in the propaganda recently, that, as I say, that are not connected or do not actually specifically mention or make a connection to an illness or the alleged pathogen. And you'll see how that over the last year, there's just been one after another, after another, after another, after another.
Well, I'm very glad that ISIS is so scared of COVID, because we haven't seen them leave the house.
Oh, I don't know. They may have been ahead of us because, you know, they've been wearing face masks.
Of the virus almost there.
Yeah.
Really.
Maybe they thought the Western culture, that was the virus. You know, it's all haram.
Yeah, just imagine being a suicide killer and getting the virus. I mean, that would be so bad for your resume.
Maybe that's what they're trying to work on now. Maybe they're hoping they can just get people infected and then send them into crowded places.
Bill was talking about that virus terrorism. Yeah,
I think that is definitely part of that longer term narrative that they're portraying.
When Bill says it, take it seriously, I would say, because he's a prophet.
Yeah, that's why he bought the company.
Yeah,
he loved the virus so much he bought the company.
Yeah.
Or maybe it went the other way around. He was so desperate for a virus for him to love. You know, he wanted a virus that he could have as his own little pet. So he had to buy all the companies to make sure they created one.
Yeah, he wants to inject 7 billion people, but not give the recipe away for free.
Yeah.
Right.
To me, it really is like the fictional characters of people like Dr. Evil.
Yeah.
And I know, like I was saying earlier, I know I'm often sarcastic and irreverent and take the piss and, you know, make things comedic a little bit, but that's because I find that by using that kind of transmutative power of comedy and irreverence, you know, it's gallows humor often, but that diffuses the damage of the fear effect of the terrorizing that they themselves project onto everyone. You know, you have to be able to point at it and just laugh. If you struggle with that, then it's having an effect on you that they want, that they benefit out of. But to bring in something else that I wanted to mention that happened over the last week, I thought was another good example of the hypocrisies and the inconsistencies that hopefully should help people. It's like stepping stones through the chaos of the dissonance. You know, you've had your world paradigm shattered by a lot of the shit that's happened over the last year. And in that confusion, in that chaotic fallout of that effect, you're just standing on shifting sands all the time. There's no solid ground for you to move forward. You know, there's nothing for you to walk on to move forward. Spotting those inconsistencies, I feel, is that foundation of rationality. Yeah, I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's that foundation of logic and rationality. I know I'm quite happy to argue that not everything in reality is zeros and ones. You know, I'm certainly more of a spiritual person than just purely a materialist. You know, I'm certainly not a materialist. I'm not an atomist, some people call it, but even so, that solid foundation of logical consistency, that is how we make sense of what we call reality. And if you don't think you need to make sense of it on a constant basis, then you may be descending into complete madness, or you're just deluding yourself because you don't really want to think about it, or you're belittling yourself because the system has constantly told you that you're too dumb to understand any of this shit. You should just shut up and listen to the experts. Anyway, I'm waxing poetic again to try and make a point about logical inconsistencies in their actions and what they're telling the public they can and can't do. A couple of weeks ago, there was around 500,000 people that gathered in London, and there was other gatherings all around the world in different cities that also held their own get-togethers to shout out about all this craziness. But the UK media didn't cover that gathering in London until it got to the end of the day, and there was a little bit of a scuffle with some of the piglets that they'd sent to harass people for their musical equipment. And I made the point last week of how a lot of the protest gatherings often get themselves into trouble in that situation, particularly in Hyde Park, because there is a statute in place that says you can't use electronic amplification in that area. So it creates the justification for the police to come in mob-handed and, push people around and take their shit, basically. And they keep doing it again and again and again. So I was having a little rant about how, to those people that are organising these things, why don't you just let your people know about that? Just say to them, please don't bring any electronic equipment unless you're prepared to have it confiscated by the police, because the police will do that kind of shit. And they'll use it as an excuse. So don't bring it. Bring a megaphone, bring your voice, bring your own presence. That's what matters primarily. Bring non-amplified equipment, just instruments as they are without electronic amplification. Do all that good stuff. Bring your drums and guitars and whatever. But anyway, this week there was another protest down in London, but this time it wasn't the same people. It wasn't the same theme that they were protesting about. It was supposedly about a kill the bill. There is this bill going through the parliaments which is about putting legislation in place to prevent protests, supposedly prevent all protests. So it's not really accurate. And this is something I pointed out a while ago. What they persuaded people to do is go out and protest for the right to be given permission to protest. It's illogical. It's illogical, Jim. It's illogical. It's circular. It's a complete venting of people's angst and anger. And it's also a fertile ground. It's been deliberately and created and enabled to give certain groupings a platform to push certain ideas. Social manipulation, social engineering, backed by big money in many cases. A lot of these are supported by NGOs and all that kind of shit, and they're so-called philanthropic donators, so that they can buy themselves very expensive ranches and mansions, even though they're supposedly fighting for the people. Anyway, slight digression. I think some people get that reference because it's connected to BLM. I know that's one of the main things I wanted to mention. This supposed march protest that was against Kill the Bill. And as I say, just that alone to me doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, okay, you're protesting for the right to be given permission to protest. You're demanding that they set up a legislative system, a system of legislation that says you can only have a protest if you get their little permission slip that say they will allow you to do a protest within these designated times and along this designated route, and that you'll be given permission as to whether or not you can use electronic amplification gear, etc. You're protesting for the right to be given permission. It's just idiotic. But it's supposed to be about that. But I was watching some of the coverage, thanks to Subject Access again. He was there covering it again. Watching some of the coverage that he was getting, and it's like, most of this is BLM. And there's a bit of Antifa there as well. I could see various people in that kind of get up and carrying those kind of signs and whatever. So is this really Kill the Bill? Is this just about legislation taking place in the UK? No, because you've got all this other promotion and propagation of these other messages that are controlled ideological manipulation. Why is that going on? And at the same time, the police allowed them to do their protests with no interference, which, fair enough, they did do that with the other protests, the prior anti-mask, anti-COVID, anti-bullshit march. But with this one, as it got towards the end of the day, they got down to that area in Hyde Park again, And lo and behold, the BLM people had turned up with a little van in the back of which they had PA gear, and they were playing out the banging rave music, and everybody was gathering round, and there was literally hundreds of people all in close proximity, although they were almost all wearing masks. So they were being good little citizens and, you know, wearing their masks, but they weren't socially distant. And they were all whooping and hollering, which means they were projecting COVID at each other. And I'm sure some of them must have had a bit of flatulence here and there. So, you know, they were farting COVID at each other. And all the dancing about they were doing, they would have been sweating. And if you believe that your breath and your farts can carry COVID, then your sweat will as well. So they're all sweating and shouting and farting on each other, and the police are fine with that. And the music's blaring, amplification, people giving speeches and shouting slogans through this amplified equipment. Police are fine with that. Was it because they'd got a permission slip to protest? And when they'd applied for that permission slip, they'd specified that they were going to bring amplification gear. I think that might be what they'll say, but then please reference my earlier question and answer about, you know, you're protesting for the right to be given permission to protest.
Well, Germany has recently signed into law prison sentences for COVID violations. So they've moved away from the fines and added a 5-year maximum penalty for a hug, shaking hands,
fucking hell,
being too close together, shit like that. Yeah, that's the maximum, you know. But let's say you organize a hug party in a elderly home. Yeah, they're gonna try to get you for 5 years, for sure.
Yeah,
right. Because that's
an example.
Hugging Dragony? No. That's murder. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's where it's going. And we are here in Holland. It's still fines. I think in the UK it's also still fines. I think.
Primarily, yeah. As far as I know, they haven't pursued any kind of custodial sentence yet.
Well, they have to write that into law first. That
they did.
COVID violation is a punishable by.
They've claimed they have, because there is that potential 10-year sentence. Yeah, if you were an organizer of an event and shit like that, yeah, you can potentially be given a 10-year sentence.
Seriously? Okay.
Yeah, okay. It's fucking insane, right? They're claiming that they will put people in prison for longer than they put people in prison for heinous crimes. Yeah. Paedophiles get a few years in prison, but if you do something naughty against the official bullshit narrative, you could potentially face a sentence of up to 10 years.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with an illness.
Imagine we did something like that with the AIDS patients back in the 90s, right? Or in the 80s, 90s, where we would fucking lock them up and tell them to fucking stay away. No, back then it was already like, you cannot treat AIDS people like they are monsters, because you have to treat them like normal. You know, it's not like they will infect you immediately.
It took quite a number of years as well. I think I'm only. But
they were really on the side of the ailment, basically. Like, you have to treat them with respect, and right, and now everybody fucking is a threat. It's a fucking, you know.
I was just trying to think through some of the. There were some cases where they'd prosecuted people for maliciously infecting others with HIV. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that took quite a few years before that side of it sort of got acknowledged, to the point that they actually took people to court for it. But you're right. Initially, it was all like, "Oh no, we've got to care for people. Of course, we care for people." But they eventually turned it into something that could be classed as a malicious intent. And that would make me wonder now whether, if there is any, I was going to say if there's any truth to it here. that can be a bit difficult to define in this respect. But the concept of the shedding, if there's any reality to the claims that the jabbed people will be shedding stuff that is therefore bad for people who haven't had the jab, I find it a bit, it doesn't add up to me that is how it will actually end up working. Speaking with Gary about it earlier, I think there's a various kind of transition phase between your own biology and the stuff that you're shedding, excreting, etc. And whether it be exactly the same as what's in the jab, I don't think it would be. And if you haven't got the jab, if you are a member of the control group, because really when it comes down to it, all of those of us that are saying we don't want it, we are voluntarily putting ourselves in what would be defined as a control group. I was listening to Derek Diogy last week. I think I caught one of his videos, and he was presenting that argument and trying to get people to organise into an official control group. I say official, not sanctioned by the system or the government or whatever, but to actually define it correctly, scientifically, as like, right, okay, we are going to be our control group, and do a monitor, a log, a study of that control group. Yeah? I mean, that's a possibility, but for me, it's, if you don't want the jab, if you don't want to participate in their insanity, then you are already implicitly in a control group.
Yeah, but in an experiment, you would also have a placebo group.
Yeah. So,
is there any sign of them doing that? Them injecting?
Not that there's any indication of directly
that and following those people if they develop or not.
Yeah, they need constant monitoring.
Yeah. And that's it. It is an open experiment, but it's not really, because they're not, keeping data or putting out a placebo group.
Yeah,
that's
some of their own announcements and documentation, as far as I'm concerned, anyway, has basically made it clear that this whole situation is an experimental process. The fact that it does not have official approval. They keep on the general news media and the talk shows and whatever, they still keep telling the same incorrect information. And I'm saying that to be nice to them, that they're just making a mistake by saying the incorrect information. Whereas really, I'm convinced that no, most of them are doing it because they've been told to say that. And why they're being told to say that? Because it feeds the illusion that they've created. So they're not going to change that lie, basically. But they still keep repeating the same kind of comments that it is official, that it is approved. It's not. It's been given emergency sanction. That's the only reason it's being used. And in their own government, in the UK government statements, they've let it slip here and there that, we're in an experimental phase. And in the company's own documentation, they clearly reference it as being an experimental phase. So the general populace thinks, government said it's fine, so therefore it's been approved. We're great, that's wonderful. Yeah, they don't even have any comprehension of the fact that you are being experimented on.
The Dutch experts here have said, oh no, we don't know the outcome. It's an open experiment, but we don't know what's happening. We have no idea if it's working or not. Really, we think it does, but. But that could be the big lie, and also the placebo, that the people who think they had the shot, that they are safe, they somehow start acting normal again because they think they are protected or somehow, right? And in a way find out that there's nothing, there was nothing, right? They're not getting the effect, just like us who don't get the jab and don't believe in all this bullshit. I don't wash my hands, more than normal, or do shit differently. Right, but maybe the people after the jab, they relax a little bit, they act normal, and then they come back into normal life, and it's like, okay, there is no virus, but there never was a fucking virus, right? So there is a placebo effect in that alone.
Yes,
like it's working. The virus is gone. Yeah, what virus? What virus to begin with? It's.
He could have just as well gone and scraped up some of the stuff from Saint Walpurga's tomb and rubbed that on yourself and said you had the cure.
Yeah, it's a brilliant sales fucking page.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. If I could sell something that way, I do. I'm a criminal, but
can I sell you this flying car?
Away with this shit.
Can I sell you this flying car? I'm not sure if it will actually work.
Well, it flies.
It might fly for a bit, but then it might also blow up, or it might just fall apart. So you fall out the sky, and you can't hold me culpable if that happens.
Yeah.
Okay. You want one? It'll cost you though.
I can guarantee you it will fly if you drive it over a cliff.
All for a few seconds. You'll be high as a kite until you crash to the ground. That's all these kind of things. I mean, again, we're saying them in jest, but these are the inconsistencies that do not add up to match your own personal observations of reality and the way the world is ticking over and going along and the way people are with each other. Yeah, I mean, as a general observation, obviously some people have locked themselves in a cupboard and shit.
It only matches up in total control and maximum profits.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the whole story fucking adds up. That's where that makes sense.
Yeah.
The rest doesn't make sense at all.
The other agendas, if you try and look at the course of the last year plus as being because of COVID, because of an alleged pathogen, then you end up with all those inconsistencies and illogical methods and blah, blah, blah. It just doesn't add up. Whereas if you look at it as being a systematic process of manipulating the public, attacking them psychologically, basically, psychically, spiritually, until they agree to this new way of living, which we will define as the new normal, according to their statements, or the Great Reset, other labels they've stuck on it, but basically all of it adds up. Then it all matches the kind of shit that they've been talking about that they want to do.
Yeah.
It just to bring it back to that, it's not exactly a main theme, but it sort of is, I've been trying to think about ways of talking to people about this kind of information, or putting across the information, the questions, etc., in such a way where we're not, I feel anyway, we're not just banging our heads against the wall of those same data points of saying to people of like, do you know about the PCR tests? Yeah, there's still people talking about that now. To me, that should be sort of like, the same kind of argumentation of, did the towers actually fall down? Yeah, on the day of the great going away of buildings. Did you, I know you were looking at it probably on a screen. For most of us, we were seeing it, on a screen presentation. But however you think they did what they did, and whoever you think may have been involved in making it happen, did they fall down? And did people die? Yes. And in the same kind of way now, we've got that kind of situation of they're saying one thing to us and completely other things are happening in the world around us. Yeah. So how do you say that to people without just repeating the same argumentation? Again, using that example of the day of the buildings evaporating. The continuous argument about, was it explosives, or was it energy weapons, or was it this, that, or the other? Details. We still end up having that same debate with people that are new to the information as I was having that long ago, 10 plus years ago. And what I don't want to see happening with this situation, because this is without wanting to sound over dramatic, this situation is far beyond that one day and the things that resulted from that one day. That one day was a stepping stone towards where we are now. So dealing with just that one event doesn't solve all of the everything that's been done off the back of it. Yeah? And in a similar way now, during this time period, I don't want to get stuck on let's have a debate or argument about whether the tests they're using are actually meaningful in any way at all. We've had a year plus of all that information. For those people that are still struggling with that, it's like, here you go, here's the internet. Get on with it. Yeah. You can't.
Yeah, you can already look forward to the next thing. We are now in the midst of the high point of the COVID thing.
Yes.
It's going to go down. I think they have reached most of their goals.
That's why
you can look out for the next big thing that's coming up. And
that's why I think the last few weeks I've been looking at it more like that green agenda switchover. And certainly the last few weeks I've seen more of that in that media propaganda. It's now no longer like it was in the summer of last year, where nearly every story was just like COVID, 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 COVID. Now it's not. Now it's COVID green, COVID green, COVID green, 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 COVID green, 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 green. And it's gradually transitioning. Their excuses for why they're doing all the shit they're doing is gradually transitioning. Now they want you to get rid of all your pets, not because they're a vector for the illness, but because they're a carbon burden. So we've gone from COVID to carbon. It's all progressing at a pace. And that's why, like I say, I don't want to get stuck arguing over details again in a similar fashion to what happened over the 9/11 event. So much of people's energy just got stuck on that argumentation over details. It's like, yes, we need to know that information. Yes, those questions need to be asked. That discussion has to happen. But to just keep rehashing it for years now, this year will be the 20th anniversary, won't it? Yeah. And the same questions are still outstanding in many ways. Yeah. And I can see it ending up in 2023, where people are still arguing about whether the PCR test should be used in any kind of valid fashion. Yeah. We've got to get past that point, because those are information traps, which I think the system is quite happy for us to get bogged down with. They throw a whole load of detail out at us and hope that we just get swamped in argumentation over each little data point in all those details. It's like, well, hang on. You arguing over about, the minutiae of that Pfizer PDF. We can argue over the minutiae of the results in their study, whereas you can talk about what is actually taking place on the streets that has a direct effect on people's lives. Yeah, if that makes sense. Hopefully. So if you're trying to talk with people about all this kind of stuff, and hopefully trying to help them deal with their own dissonance and denial, just as another example, you can point at those data points, those dots, connecting the dots. Point at those data points of the inconsistencies, like I've been trying to describe them. Why the no flying when some people still can fly. And don't forget people traveling by ship. Yeah, that didn't stop. Although cruise liners stopped, again, it's a leisure industry. But people actually moving around in ships, on boats, etc., didn't stop. Flying didn't truly stop. Driving cars was restricted for a bit, but again, for some demographics, for some people, it didn't really stop. There's been these inconsistencies, and attributing magical abilities to a pathogen, an illness, a virus. It isn't even a living thing unto itself. A virus is not a separate organism. Attributing all these super intelligent abilities to this thing such that it can differentiate between certain demographics and stuff like that. It knows that, it's 10 o'clock. I can't get anyone there. Or it's 10 o'clock and now it's my time to rampage. All these various inconsistencies. But the ones in particular pointed at are just to try and demonstrate how the Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 timeline is more accurate to the events as they've been rolling out over the last year, plus what's been happening over the last year. If you try to apply the justification of it being to protect us from an illness, then the things don't add up. The events as they've occurred over the year don't add up to scrutiny, or even to a general casual glance, let alone scrutiny. That was about the only thing that sort of really stood out to me over the last week to be worth mentioning. It's been the same old kind of fucking bullshit in the media output. I mentioned that thing about the £320 million contract. We said it wasn't going to stop anytime soon. It was going to go on till 2022, 2023, potentially to 2025. Government spokesholes saying things like you're still going to be wearing masks. You think that getting the jabby jab was going to return you to normal. Do you remember they told you that? Yeah, the only way back to normal is to get the jabby jab. You got to have the jabby jab if you want to go back to normal. Now everybody's had the jabby jab. Have you gone back to normal? Just ask people that. Yeah, how long is 2 weeks?
There's always somebody who doesn't take the jabby jab, Cookie, and that's a problem.
And that's the reason.
Member who didn't take the jabby jab.
And that's the reason why it keeps coming back again. Funny that we've got loads and loads of other viruses that have been doing exactly the same thing for all the time we've been in recorded history, and yet we're still here. They didn't wipe out the planet, did they?
Well, first of all, masks don't work against the viruses. They are way too small.
Yeah.
So.
And like I said, there's so many different data points that you can dig into to present to people. But I think it is now worth, I want to say, trying to simplify the information. But I'm worried that calling it simplify makes it sound like you're diluting it or, chopping it up into easily digested bite-sized chunks kind of things. I don't think that's the point. It's just you can find things that are simply obvious, like the thing about the flying. They told most of the public that you can't fly anymore because if you do, it will carry the illness everywhere and we'll all die and you'll kill Granny. So why then are all the fucking celebrities still flying around all over the place? And this was long before any of the injections were available. So why aren't we all hating on them? I'm saying we, as in the general public's kind of like social media outrage reaction. Why are they not all hating on them for being granny killers, flying around the world, spreading their illnesses everywhere? They didn't, did they? The public just went, Tom Cruise is going to so-and-so to film his new movie. Oh, I hope I get to see him. Celebrity culture. Yeah, archetypal culture. A bit like worshipping saints, but now they're saints of celebrity. Saints of the illuminated ones, not the real looks, the ones that use fake lighting. Hollywood, Hollyweird, the casters of illusions. The conjurers of light in the magic lantern. Again,
it's a reversed Big Brother, isn't it? It's like everybody's locked inside their house watching the outside of their house.
Obviously, Bill Gates is probably at home watching like a bank of monitors, like we're all the people in the Big Brother household.
Yeah.
You know, he's sitting there going, "Oh, watch what happens when we tell them to jump up and down on the spot." Whee! I bet he's loving it. That's why he's always giggling so much. You noticed?
Yeah.
When he does interviews, he's always he's giggly like a schoolboy most of the time. I mean, I'm doing the same thing now, but you know, I'm not trying to kill half the population across the planet. So, I hope you've all been having a good week, a good weekend. We have reached that time period that is the true beginning of summer, the phase of the year that is summer. So you made it this far. Don't believe their bullshit that you're not going to make it further. They want to convince everyone that we're all going to die any minute because of a deadly pathogen. It's coming to get you. No. Just no.
Well, there's a UFO report coming out. So UFOs and COVID. I cannot wait.
Disclosure.
Oh, that's going to be so fun.
Yeah. Why is it that, like, in the past, that's a good point, actually. In the past, they've given us various stories about how the aliens are going to rescue us from ourselves. So they're going to, or they have done, allegedly, things like deactivated nuclear missiles, you know, cause missiles to not launch and stuff like that. You know, allegedly, they've done things like that in the past. And that kind of storyline of the alien messiah, you know, comes to rescue us from our own stupidity and heal the planet and all that kind of good stuff. You know, Klaatu Barada Nikto. You know, they haven't really done that with COVID, have they? They haven't put out loads of press. There hasn't been any, what would you call them? You know, you get those kind of UFO prophets, you know, they'll come out the woodwork and say, "Oh, I've been speaking with the aliens and they told me that May the 3rd at 1632 is going to be the end of the world, but they're all going to come and pick us up in the mothership." There's been none of that for COVID.
Misunderstand disclosure here. It's not like the aliens are going to come down that day and expose themselves. No. You know, the disclosure is not up to us.
You mean their technology is so good that they can get across the universe to visit us, but it's not good enough to defeat the COVID?
They don't give a shit. But I do find it suspicious that the aliens arrive when the COVID is here. So maybe there's something behind that. You know?
But why haven't we seen Stephen Greer promising the world that the aliens will get rid of the COVID? Because surely they'll be able to, you know, with their super magic technical abilities, they'll just be able to make us all
cancer, probably.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, maybe they'll cure cancer by turning us all into digital avatars.
Shoot them down, Cookie. Obviously, we can't have that. You know, infinite energy and no.
Although in the new Klaus frightening Schwab version of the future, where there is no property, then there would be good reasoning to have that kind of infinite energy device. Because the only reason we haven't been allowed to have it so far is because we've been stuck in that hierarchical economic system that requires scarcity to give things a monetary value, a commodification, so that therefore wealth, economic value can be extracted from it. Yeah, when you're living in a world according to Schwabby Boy, where you own nothing and you won't be happy, if you own nothing, then there's no reason that you'd be paying for the energy. There'd be no corporations producing energy for profit, so therefore they could make use of that kind of energy device.
But that exactly is the alien agenda. It is the Galactic Federation's agenda to unite us all under one nation, one flag, so we can explore the universe together with our alien friends in the future. Just like Star Trek and Star Wars. Right?
That's why he wears those robes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is that Israeli top guy came out with the Galactic Federation story. It's not coincidental that happens, that you have people like that saying shit like that. So I don't know, but to me it's very much Star Trek-y what they're saying, basically, right? Oh, we'll have everybody united and all the same money and everything the same and everybody happy and
for the collective good.
Yeah, and Star Trek, nobody owns anything.
No. Well, they do, but ownership is not given a kind of legal status. Yeah, they're kind of like items of memorabilia, the sentimental items or things like that. Yeah. But property in general doesn't exist in the Star Trek reality. I was just looking for one of my pictures because as a relevant reference, it just struck me about this. I might have mentioned this before. I'm not sure if I ever have, because I know I've sort of ranted on about this image a few times. But just to clarify this one thing, I'm not sure whether most people sort of get the kind of ironic inversion of this image about the ideological content with this imagery, and it's part of the reason why I use this imagery. Right, the guy in the circle is a communist. Part of this whole setup was that they had arranged this as like a setup. He had the photographer on hand so that they could get this kind of photo shot. It was a photo op, a created photo op. But my point is the guy in the middle, in the circle, who is seen as an individual in a crowd, a collective, he's a communist. Whereas all of these people here are, I'm using a generalized label because I can't speak for every individual in the crowd, blah, blah, blah. But they are all the fascists. Fascism is supposed to be about individuality. Communism is supposed to be about the collective, ideologically. So this image is a complete inversion of his chosen ideology. Yeah, but it's just the fact that in a simple visual demonstration, it completely turns both the ideologies on their head. He's making a statement, a political or ideological statement, by standing as an individual, which is completely counter to his communistic ideology. They're all making a statement as a collective about an individualistic ideology. And it just struck me as the kind of clown world inversion, the completely turning things on their head kind of thing.
There's a bit of breaking news.
Oh, what's broken?
Bill and Melinda Gates are getting a divorce.
Really?
Yeah, really.
No joke.
I just checked it. Yeah, it's on Twitter.
Oh well, it must be true. Oh,
it's definitely true.
I'm glad you mentioned Twitter because it reminded me I didn't actually.
No,
share
it's on the
this
newspapers
thing.
As well. They're separating after 27 years.
Because I did mean to talk about this, and because I hadn't put it in my notes, I hadn't remembered to swap to it and rant about this little bit. Because this story's been doing the rounds the last few days. I won't bother putting the audio on because you don't really need to hear it. He's speaking in French. It's the subtitles that really matter. But to encapsulate the point, this is from 2016. This is Klausy Frightening Schwab using exactly the same talking points that has been in his more recent presentations when he's been paraded around over the last year for the Great Reset. So even though I know for a lot of people they're pushing this story round because it's the statement where he says we will have chips implanted under the skin, subcutaneous chips inserted into you. and this is the point again, I've made this point multiple times recently. People pushing the idea of a microchip implanted in your body, and that's what they want to do. And this is a long-running thread, and I've made this point quite a few times. If there's people out there who want to have a chip implanted in them, there are already commercially available products to do exactly that. So this idea that it's something just over the hill that we're all going to have chips in place is not really true or accurate, because it's already happening if people choose to have it. Or in some situations, if an employer puts their employees in a situation where they demand the employee has a chip inserted into them for ID purposes. So it's not exactly like it's one of those things that's over the horizon and we've got to deal with this, folks, before we get to that point where they're going to stick a chip in everyone, and it's connected to other threads which are theologically based, Christian theology primarily. I'm saying theology, it's not so much to do with the way the faith works, it's more to do with just one of their prophecies more than anything. That you're all going to have this mark of the beast, which is going to be represented by the microchip being inserted into you. So in other words, nobody can trade or exchange who doesn't have the mark, who isn't bearing the mark, right? The mark does not need to be a microchip in your body. Your mobile device, your smartphone, is the mark. Because in a lot of situations, you now cannot trade unless you're carrying that device. In the situation over the last year, and as it's been building and as it is potentially going to progress, you will have to have some form of digital ID on that device that says you are allowed to trade, exchange, be in a public place, etc., etc. As a side note, somebody got prosecuted for making fake QR codes. We knew it was going to happen. When they introduce a license, the criminal element will come along to fake those licenses because there's profit involved. They can see a way of making money out of it, so they do. But this story has been pushed around again because it's him from 2016 talking about people having chips inserted into them. And I just wanted to
be a digital ID. It's a DNA ID.
Yeah, biometric based.
Chip checks your DNA with you.
Yeah. But this, to me, this is still interesting and worthwhile information to share around, because it provides proof that this guy has been pushing the same ideological arguments and project idea, the Great Reset, for at least 4 years plus. And I know if people do their own research, even though you're naughty for doing your own research. If you do, you'll be aware of the fact that the WEF have been working on this idea for years. So it's not something new. But I think it just bothers me because people, quite a few people anyway, constantly fixate on this concept of a microchip in your body. The current technology is far beyond that already. If people want to, as I said, there's commercial companies out there that can do it for you. If you want a smart home where you have a chip in your hand that activates your smart, that's already commercially available. You can go online and order yourself one now. So this idea that it's something that's just come in, it's going to be here soon, we're going to deal with this before it's too late, or it's very similar argumentation that gets people fixated on something that is highly unlikely to actually ever come to be, because it's a misdirection from the way they actually will implement this idea. As I said, for a lot of people, you're already carrying around the mark. That's your mobile device, your smartphone or tablet, etc. A lot of people use them to pay in a shop or pay for bills or pay for tickets, etc., etc. So therefore that is a mark, because you can't buy that stuff without that item, without that thing, that license to purchase. As we progress, the other technology, like Pete just mentioned, like I've talked about before on recent shows, the technology they've got now means they don't need for a chip to be in you for them to be able to track and monitor and restrict your ability to trade and exchange, etc. They can read the veins in your palm. They can have a palm scanner. They can do retinal scanning. They can do face scanning. They can do gait analysis. And this is not even including all the other information and data they have about you already on file. A lot of it from your own admissions on your social media footprint.
Yeah, but it all pivots on integrity of your body.
Yeah.
So we have to lose that first.
Yeah. To me, that's
part of the agenda right now also, but
yeah, that's what's more important here, because this is not so much that they want to put a microchip
the jab for you, you're taking it for somebody else, that shit.
And it's the legislative leap of you just completely losing bodily autonomy. So even though, like I said, I feel strongly that this concept of the microchip thing is a distraction or a misdirection, the reality is that they still want to inject something into you. And the real thing that they want is not so much that they want to put a chip in you. They just want to be able to put something in you. Because if they can get the legal authority to be able to say, you need this thing in you, that's that bodily autonomy barrier breached. Yeah. Once you've done that, then yes, they could turn around and say, oh, we want to put this chip in you now, or we want to put this electrode in you now, whatever. Yeah.
Cookie. You will own nothing. No, seriously, think about it.
I got a cardboard box.
Your own body is not even yours anymore.
No,
you will own nothing. They own your fucking everything. They decide what goes in, goes out, how much you eat, sleep, shit, breathe, fart.
Yeah.
It's,
that mark.
You own nothing is literally nothing.
That mark will be your DNA, which, as you say, like eventually we'll get to a stage where you don't own your DNA. Yeah, but they will use your DNA will become the mark.
DNA is just to identify you. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's a code. That's already what they did. They made it a code. Everything is code. Learn to code. We just rewrite some code and print it, and then we inject it, and gone is the virus. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So,
well,
no, it's not just code. We are more than just code. We are spiritual beings. We are, this is
DNA is God and his cat.
We are losing so much with all this.
Because it's encoded in CATG. Yeah, so it's cat with God.
We are losing not just everything, and we will own nothing. But it's even in your head. It's in your mind. It's your spirit. It's
complete dominance.
It's hard to put in words.
Yeah,
but yeah. This goes so much deeper where, and where it will end, I don't know. It will probably end somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Not everything will succeed. Not everything will pan out the way they planned it. But,
I'm not, I say this kind of thing not to be pessimistic, because I'm not about the situation. I'm not pessimistic about the situation. I'm optimistic, but I'm not. Acknowledge the reality that they have persuaded a large amount of the population to accept this idea that they're going to have this thing put into them. Yeah, this injection, jabby jab. Yeah, and even though we can, they want us to argue about whether it's a microchip in there or microdust or hydrogel or all these other little things that, technologically they're out there, but they want us to fixate about what's in the thing rather than the fact that they just want to be able to put something into you. Yeah. They'll let us have endless debates and arguments about what's actually the content of the syringe, but all they're really concerned with is that most of the population have gone, oh yeah, you want to put something in me? Okay, then here's my arm. Yeah. That's what they've been
I'm
after.
wondering what the world is going to look like when we have lost everything. You know, and we own nothing, and everything is in somebody's control except yours.
Yeah.
And that's not just for the lower people, that even for the higher ups, you know, to a certain extent, everything is dependent then on the system that it provides or does something for you or not. Right? This 2030 is pretty close, and so they're already setting their new goals. They're probably writing the next reset papers right now on what's coming for 2050, 2070. You know, yeah, we are fucked, pretty fucked. And right now it's a pretty harmless virus, but who's to say they're not fucking going to release a real fucking deadly, you know, Ebola-like thingy, where people really drop to dead on the street or whatever. I don't know. Who's them from stopping? You know, they have the technology to get the medication beforehand, so they are safe, right? They got the facts that works. They can release some fucking germ that kills only blonde hair, blue-eyed people, preferably. You know,
or people that sound like Kermit the Frog.
They're crazy like that. Yeah, people who sound like.
So I was just thinking of Billy Bob. Yeah, when he gets excited, he sounds like Kermit. I opened this up. I'm not sure which bit it is you were referencing. Taz sent me the link for this. This is on the Ice Age Farmer. I'll put the link in the side chat in a sec. Reaching Absolute Zero from UK Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. So they're talking about the way the climate's going to change.
Oh.
It could be. Absolute Zero allows us to recognize how many opportunities are created by pursuing the strict emissions target. Ah, right, okay. So it's about that kind of agenda. Hang on, let me put have I got the right link? Copy and paste it again. Not that one, that one. And once I've done this, I'm going to have a quick review of some of the memes. There it is. Thank you. Thanks for the link, Taz. Hello to everyone in the chat room. Dino, hello. Hope you're well. No, I saw another one. Tinkle Think, hello. And the Pale Horse, hello. Did I say hello to you earlier? I think I did. Or did I? I can't remember. Summer, hello. It is now summer. Hello to summer. And CC Jelly, hello. Sorry for the infinity feed in the screen share. I just thought I'd jump back to the chat room quick and have a quick scroll up because I thought I'd saw some new names in the chat. Right, okay. Stop the screen share now and I'll find some memes to finish up with because we've actually gone past the hour. I didn't notice with all my ranting, sorry. I was too busy waffling on because I know there's been quite a few decent memes recently. Let me find it. Yeah, this one that Dave's pointed out with the connection for Beltane, I thought this was quite appropriate. Beltane, here in the UK anyway, and a few other parts of Europe have got equivalent, maybe slightly different versions, but something equivalent to this. But in the UK, the Morris dancers usually come out and do some of their dancing ceremony kind of stuff And this year, to sort of make a kind of statement about the racism, the intersectional bullshit that's been going on, all that kind of shit, they all painted their faces blue. And when I saw the story about it, I was thinking, oh, it's a bit like the Smurfs, isn't it? Maybe they're appropriating the Smurfs, or they're going to turn Smurfs into something racist now as well. But Days pointed this out. Notice this, REM guy there as well. This imagery of the blue masks with the red hand over the mouth.
Losing my religion, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, losing my religion. But also, you have this connection to Kali, who is traditionally shown with the blue skin. And obviously with the big tongue sticking out is the red mouth. And it's a little bit, in some ways it's a bit subtle because that's obviously a hand, but it's red in the area where the mouth is. And you've also got the fact, Dave's pointed this out in one of his comments, the fact that you turn blue when you are asphyxiated, when you've got a lack of oxygen. And I don't have a link for this, but there were the stories last year from China about the doctor who turned blue because he'd got the illness. And as far as I remember, it was the same doctor who had supposedly been trying to warn them about the illness when it first started. And then as kind of like an ironic result, he ended up getting it himself and getting ill from it. And then the links that you put in for that latest TV show, which is just absolutely saturated in propaganda. Yeah, I found some of it difficult to watch because the propaganda in it is so over the top. But the face mask thing is become quite a meme now. And in particular, that connection to the mask, the covering of your true identity, or the pretense of being somebody or something else. Yeah. It stood out to me. I mean, I get the kind of point they were making. Like, now with the current political climate the way it is, you're not supposed to, be doing these kind of traditional things because they would be considered European cultural things. So it's all about white people. So that's not allowed. That's bad. White people are bad according to the current narrative. So they painted themselves blue.
Also, it's a Uyghur mask. So it's the people who are being imprisoned in China. This one.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I thought the link to the Marvel TV show was interesting because they're also all of a sudden wearing masks and they have this hand symbol and the globe then, but they're called the flag smashers and have similar motivations and stuff like that. And it's a virus.
I don't know if this is. Yeah, I think this is Skype. Skype doing its
fake news.
No, I was looking for the image that Gary had put in of the Uruk-hai from the Lord of the Rings movie. The image with the white hand plastered on his face. He's got the print of the white hand on his face because it's uncannily similar, just different colouring. Yeah. But there is this element of the mask.
Symbolism is there for a reason, I think. So
yeah. And this is the element of rebirth. Because a lot of the Western culture, they're constantly given this image of Kali, the destroyer, but the destruction is to enable the rebirth. Because in their theological point of view, things are in a constant cycle of death and rebirth. So this archetype of Kali being the destroyer is just the bit that has to happen before the rebirth, So yes, mate, reset again. It's going back a few years, but there was the things like the laser image of Kali projected on the side of a building. Do you remember that one?
No.
It's going back 2 or 3 years now, I think. But there's been a steady drip, drip, drip of this kind of imagery over the last few years. Yeah, the concept of rebirth as symbolized by that element of Kali, the destroyer. The destructive female, which is counterintuitive in a natural law kind of way, because the female is the birth giver, you know, the womb man. So the concept of it being a destroyer is part of the reason why Kali is the archetype that Kali is. But
probably a Democrat.
True blue. Let's find some.
There's a bit of Hillary in there.
Let's find some amusing ones before we go. Yeah. I like the other one. I think James shared it ages ago. Hello to James as well, if he's in the chat room and I didn't see you jump in. Or the one where it's got the people with the tinfoil hats on, and it says like, "This is what you thought conspiracy theorists look like," and then it shows a picture of people with masks on. It's like, "This is what conspiracy theorists really look like." Yeah. All these people believe in a conspiracy
Fiction versus reality.
Yeah, of an alleged illness. They believe in a fantasy.
Yeah.
This is more to do with that race propaganda bullshit that's been pushed around at the moment. Yeah. They're testing whether they can be allowed to dance. You can dance, but you can't cheer.
Yeah.
That guy there, look, he's a super spreader. He's letting his sweat out. That'll be aerosolized COVID all over those people.
No, they're all clear. They're tested.
That was about the battle for cultural influence in such institutions of civil society as the church, the media, the creative arts, and the education system. That is a definition for the war of maneuver. And that's from the 1930s. I just got to show that. That is brilliant.
Yeah, I had to. Sorry.
It's the face as well. It's like, I know they've tried to make this argument that you can still tell if people are smiling by looking at their eyes, but you make the same kind of eye movement and position when you are grimacing. So he could be baring his teeth. He could be like under that mask, and you would still get the same kind of eye shape. Yeah. So the claim that, well, it doesn't matter, you can't see people's mouths. It does matter. It really does, especially for young children. Yeah, they don't learn to recognize emotions if they can't see the whole fucking face. So you're stunting their communication development.
Yeah, I also was thinking about doing something with that shadow, taking that shadow away and putting a reptilian or something in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Next time.
It's a shame you can't animate it and have like the juices all spurting out. He's not wearing gloves. No gloves, Mr. Van Tam man. You come right out of a comic book. Yeah, breaching his what do they call it? Codes. The good practice. They're supposed to be wearing gloves when they're doing stuff like that. Tut, tut, tut. Yeah. Well, we'll leave it with that terribly amusing imagery. Yes, nice shirt. Yeah, that was the whole point. Yeah, he's good old Handycock. He loves these unicorns. Why do they call them unicorns? Fantasy. Yeah, just like trannies. They call them unicorns because they don't really exist. Yeah, you cannot have the combination, the Baphomet. Yeah. Anyway, otherwise I'll start ranting and rambling again. Thanks for joining in, folks. I hope you've been having a good weekend, a good bank holiday. We'll be back again Wednesday night on the Reality Chat channel, 8 p.m. I think Steve should be on Thursday night. He was on last Thursday. Steve Tagoose, Mystery Show, 8 p.m. All of these are like UK times, BST, GMT, blah, 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 cup of tea, slice of cake. Yeah, I think most people know the routine by now. So thanks again, folks. Thanks for joining in the chat. I will read the chat tomorrow like I usually do. I usually read back through the chat. So thank you, everyone, joining in the chat. Thanks for giving us your attention for a couple of hours. Don't believe their bullshit and keep thinking while you're still allowed to before they come and steal that off you as well. See you again soon. Catches.
Bye-bye.